had a few questions over the last couple of weeks about SDLT within the context of company reconstructions, so I thought I'd cover some of the rules that we need to be aware of. I've also had a few questions following up from last week's Technical Tuesday around the base cost uplift, so hopefully I'll cover some of those points as well. So most of the legislation for SDLT that I'm talking about is within Finance Act 2003. The first piece is Section 53, tells us that for connected parties we need to use a consideration being the deemed market value, which means that when we are talking about groups, we therefore want a group relief, and as long as we have a 75% group relief under Schedule 7 of Finance Act 2003 should be available. There's a few caveats to the group relief point. The first is if there is a change of control intended, there might be an issue there under Schedule 4ZA. Also, if there is an intention to break the group, so if you transfer a property, say from the subsidiary up to its holding company with the intention of breaking the group, in theory, the way the legislation is worded means that group relief shouldn't be available in the first place. For SDLT purposes, HMRC practice following a ministerial statement some years ago has been that there isn't a problem and they will accept group relief applying, in particular if 75 relief for stamp duty purposes will be available on the demerger. So generally SDLT group relief is still available even if the group is intended to be split. We don't have the same accepted practice for LBTT. So if the property is located in Scotland, we need to be careful because transferring intra-group could cause a failure of group relief in the first place. So it's not a degrouping charge issue, it's the fact that we might not even get the group relief. Following on from last week's video in terms of the base cost uplift, if you are applying group relief and you do a sideways distribution and then demerge, then you would have a degrouping charge problem for SDLT purposes. So we rely in that kind of planning on a sideways distribution in specie. Why a distribution in specie works for SDLT planning is because if there's a distribution in specie, it needs to be an interim distribution, but there shouldn't be any consideration because of Finance Act 2003 Section 54 subsection 4, which says as long as it's a distribution there's no consideration and therefore we don't need group relief, etc. So we don't have a degrouping issue. A couple of issues you're going to have with Section 54 sub 4. You need to have reserves to do a distribution in specie, so if the company doesn't have sufficient reserves to cover the book value, and we can treat a revaluation reserve as realised for these purposes, which I think is Section 845 of the Companies Act. So we need the reserves. We also can't transfer in specie if there is any kind of security on the property, because transferring a mortgage along with the property will treat that mortgage as being the deemed consideration. So one way or another, mortgage is a problem, lack of reserves is a problem, but otherwise if you can do a distribution in specie, Section 54 sub 4 tells us that that is not going to be caught by the market value rules. There's no consideration and therefore we don't have to rely on group relief. So that's a very quick rundown of some of the aspects of SDLT, in particular a little bit on LBTT that we need to consider when we're doing company reconstructions. We've got the market value rule, we've got group relief, which could be a problem. As long as we've got a Section 75% group, it could still be a problem if there's an intention to split, especially with LBTT, or if there's an intention for a change of control. So we just need to watch out for those. If it's a distribution in specie, as long as we've got the reserves and as long as there's no mortgage, then Section 54 sub 4 should allow us to undertake a distribution in specie without the need for group relief because there's no consideration. As always, like, comment, share. It lets me know that these videos are well received, and if you have any comments or interpretation of this legislation, really interested to hear everyone's thoughts.